I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. Catholics in New York make their voices heard in Albany. We'll hear what they had to say.
Today our hope is to let legislators know that there is a Catholic population in New York State and that we have issues we're concerned about.
Plus, Lent is underway. We'll hear about some ways to sacrifice that you may not have thought about. And song, dance, and comedy at the Brooklyn Diocese Annual Youth Day.
I think it's important for young people today to see other young people experiencing their faith.
Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Religion and politics. You know, common wisdom says those are two things that you should never discuss around the dinner table. Ask just about anyone who's talked about these two things over a meal, and they'll tell you emotions can run high and the discussion can get pretty heated. But despite that old adage, religion and politics often do collide, just as they did yesterday when New York's Catholic bishops, along with priests, religious, and laity, traveled to Albany to make their voices heard on issues important to the church. Our cameras went along for the ride too, and as you're about to see, the focus was not on division, but dialogue.
The Catholic Church believes in justice and human rights, and it is important for us here to meet with our senator to, explain what we are expecting them to do for us as a people.
Today our hope is to let legislators know that there is a Catholic population in New York State and that we have issues we're concerned about. We come here to present the issues. We don't have clout, but we have a service that we bring, and for that we want to be recognized.
Well, it's important because, when we come out here, we sort of spread the word. Yeah, to make people know what we're involved and let our voices be heard.
It's wonderful to be able to witness in solidarity to our values and to bring them to the public square. We have a great contribution to make as Catholics, finding some common ground and to be able to witness with our shepherds, with our bishops.
We're always concerned about those who don't have a voice. The unborn, the undocumented, people in prison, people who are poor and homeless, suffering, struggling, on the fringes of society, those who are maybe near death, people who don't have a voice. We want to give them a voice.
We believe government exists to serve the common good, not the opposite way around. So what we're up here today is to give witness to what we hold dear and cherish, both as committed Catholics and as loyal American citizens, in saying, here's the common good. Here's what we see needs to be given attention in this community that we love.
It's a voice that needs to be heard. It's a voice that from the earliest days of the state of New York has been the spokesperson for the poor, for the uneducated, for the sick, for the immigrant. And it's very, very important that people put a face on the Catholic Church by showing the type of individuals that come here, not just clergy, not just members of religious orders, but everyone from school children to senior citizens.
We're here on behalf of the Catholic Charities to give some credence to some of the bills that are coming up and asking them to consider doing a vote in a more positive way, and we have several issues that we will be discussing.
I'm grateful that they do know that we're strong in the defense of marriage, the defense of life, the rights of the poor, our schools, our healthcare institutions. They're not surprised at all, and they always say that they appreciate the way the Catholic community brings concerns, not only what we say, but how we say it, that there's always an element of civility and charity and dialogue.
I think anytime there's a gathering of a good number of their constituents, people tend to listen. I mean, if they're not listening, then they're really not representing the people. And I think that's why we're here. We're witnesses to say our voice matters, and we feel it has a powerful message.
We do have an important role to play in the state because of the population we have, such a large population, well represented, and we want to speak to those representatives, let them know the issues that are really of concern to us.
Well, and among the meetings that took place there in Albany, one was between Governor Andrew Cuomo and the bishops. And just a day after that meeting, Governor Cuomo making waves in a hot-button issue of importance to the Catholic Church. We'll have that story and the rest of the day's headlines coming up. But first, you know, today is Ash Wednesday, and we wanted to get your thoughts about Lent and how you observe it. So we sent our cameras to St. Patrick's Cathedral in Manhattan for some answers.
It's to prove my faith.
I hope I'm using the model of Christ.
It's part of the ritual that we go through during the liturgical year, and this is the time of the year where we focus on sacrifice.
Is when God was put to his crucifixion and he spilled his blood for our sins and washed our sins away, and people have to know that.
Just a time to make up for all the things that you've done throughout the year and just become a better Christian overall.
You do give something up, which is important, because you do, not that you suffer by giving up something like soda, but you do get to sacrifice a little bit in honor of someone that gave up so much.
And unfortunately, it should be every day, you know, that we think about Christ and God. But, you know, luckily we have Lent to remind us, so it's a good thing.
Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up later, using song, dance, and comedy to reach young people in Brooklyn. But first, let's have a look at the day's headlines. Well, less than a day after meeting with the state's Catholic bishops, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo reportedly held a brainstorming meeting today to look at ways to legalize same-sex marriage. Reports say Cuomo met with around a dozen advocates of same-sex marriage and that the governor wants to introduce a bill on it by June. Bishop DiMarzio was among the bishops who met with Cuomo in Albany yesterday. Following Ash Wednesday Mass today, we asked the bishop if same-sex marriage came up in that meeting.
We didn't concentrate on that. We had a whole agenda of things that we thought were important. We talked about that in the context of religious freedom, that people should be able to practice their faith. Nobody should be constrained to do something they don't believe in. That was one of the things we mentioned in that context. So again, we had a good reception from him, but he has his own opinions on things, so we'll see what happens.
Well, New York State Legislature previously considered a bill to legalize same-sex marriage. That bill passed in the State Assembly, but it was defeated in the Senate. Well, turning now to Philadelphia, an update on news that the Archdiocese there has placed 21 priests on administrative leave just weeks after a grand jury's report on sexual abuse by clergy. We get the latest on the story now from reporter Walt Hunter.
From the highest levels of the Catholic Church in Philadelphia, an announcement unprecedented in the history of this archdiocese and any other in America. More than 20 priests placed on administrative leave following what a grand jury discovered were credible allegations of sexual abuse against them.
The Cardinal has stated that he takes those concerns very seriously. He is demonstrating that with his actions today.
Specifically, 21 priests were put on administrative leave. 8 will not be placed on leave, the Archdiocese determining that the allegations against them were unfounded. The actions by Cardinal Justin Regali come more than 3 weeks after a grand jury revealed 37 priests were on active duty despite abuse allegations.
The Cardinal's actions today are unprecedented. And I think it's definitely a step in the right direction.
The Survivors Network of those abused by priests protested that the names of the 21 would not be revealed, raising many questions, including how parishioners will know if one of their clergy have been temporarily removed from their parish.
We will be making announcements in all of the affected parishes regarding the priests who have been placed on administrative leave. Those announcements will be taking place on Ash Wednesday and this coming weekend.
Well, that report from Walt Hunter during Ash Wednesday Mass today. Now, Philadelphia Archbishop Cardinal Justin Regali told those gathered that, quote, "We are especially conscious of the grave sins of sex abuse committed against minors, in particular by members of the clergy," end quote. He also went on to say that the church renewed its efforts to prevent those evil acts and protect children from harm. Well, from Illinois, after listening to both sides of the issue, Governor Pat Quinn today signed a bill to abolish the death penalty in that state. Quinn's decision comes 10 years after then-Governor George Ryan halted all executions in the state following the exoneration of some death row inmates. Quinn said he was convinced that it would be impossible to administer capital punishment without mistakes. He said abolishing it was the right thing to do. Well, turning now to Egypt and another deadly clash between Coptic Christians and Muslims in the country's capital of Cairo. 13 people were killed and around 90 others wounded, that according to Egypt's health minister. Fighting happened after at least 1,000 Christians gathered to protest the burning of a church this past weekend. The violence comes just one day after Egypt's new prime minister met with Christians. Prime Minister Issam Sharaf said he would speak to Egypt's military council about the situation. The president of the U.S. Copts Association says it's the first time a seated prime minister has met with protesters. Meanwhile, from Libya, the situation there shows no signs of slowing down. Today, the regime of leader Muammar Gaddafi announced a reward of more than $400,000 for the capture of a top opposition figure. Rebels have taken control of much of Libya, demanding that Gaddafi leave office. The Apostolic Vicar of Tripoli called for an end to the bloodshed. According to the Vatican news agency Fidesz, he said he believes that there is another way out of this situation. Well, turning now to the Vatican, where Pope Benedict celebrated Ash Wednesday Mass today. The Pope took part in the annual traditional Ash Wednesday procession and Mass in Rome. At the Basilica of St. Babina, the Pope blessed and imposed ashes on those gathered there. And you see here that the pontiff was receiving ashes himself. Earlier in the day, at his weekly general audience, Benedict talked about the meaning of Lent.
As Lent begins, let us accept Christ's invitation to follow him more closely, renew our commitment to conversion and prayer, and look forward to celebrating the resurrection in joy and newness of life.
Well, during the traditional Ash Wednesday procession, Benedict crossed the Tiber River. Well, meantime, a large group of Anglicans in the UK are preparing to cross the Tiber, figuratively speaking, and enter the Catholic Church this Lent. More than 600 Anglicans were expected to attend a Mass in England today as they prepare to convert to Catholicism. They're expected to enter the church just before Easter as part of a special ordinariate set up more than a year ago. And this Ash Wednesday, the long-awaited updated translation of the Catholic New American Bible has been released. The new translation has been in the spotlight for about the past week or so, ever since the Bishops' Conference first announced some of the updates. Among the changes, the word booty, which has taken on different connotations over the years, has been changed to spoils, as in spoils of war. A representative from the Bishops' Conference calls the update the Bible in high def. Well, something from the Department of Corrections now, a correction for you on a story we brought yesterday. Now, when Pope Benedict answers questions about Jesus for an interview for Italian television, it will in fact not be the first time he's granted a TV interview. Back in 2006, the Pope took questions from 4 German TV journalists at his summer residence of Castel Gandolfo in an hour-long interview. Now, this latest interview with Benedict will take place during Holy Week and air on Italian television on Good Friday. And Scottish singing sensation Susan Boyle is turning the Lenten sacrifice into an opportunity to help others. Now, Boyle, who is Catholic, announced that she's one of the UK celebrities taking part in the We Box Big Change campaign. That's we as in small. Participants save money during Lent and then they give it to charity. The money raised will go to support communities in Haiti still recovering from last year's devastating earthquake. Going to a good cause there. Well, stay tuned. There's much more currents ahead. When we return, how's the weather? What you give up for Lent may determine the answer to that question. But right now, more of what people had to say outside St. Patrick's Cathedral after receiving ashes on this Ash Wednesday.
I think it's about every day, just making sure that you renew yourself. To me, I renew myself every Sunday when I go to church. I think I recharge my spirit every time I go to Mass. If you believe in Jesus Christ, you take this very seriously and it's very, close to your heart.
That's our belief, our faith.
Some people think everything that any religion does is a ritual, which I don't agree with. And even if you want to say it's a ritual, fine, but it's part of our faith and it's what we do to make us feel closer to God in our religion, which is the whole point of the religion.
I want it to be natural. Like, that's my goal, is to take it out of the ritual, actually. I want to give up something that has been stopping me from really having a relationship with God and, myself.
Welcome back. Well, today is the day it all begins. Ash Wednesday is the beginning of the 40-day season of Lent. And perhaps nothing defines this season more than its invitation to the faithful to give up something. That's right, sacrifice something you love for the next 40 days. What can that sacrifice be, you ask? Well, the answers run the gamut from foods like chocolate or pizza, maybe even chocolate pizza if there is such a thing, or maybe drinks like soda, coffee, just about anything with caffeine. It would make it a little rough for me to make it through the day, but that's one of the things that you can consider. Even giving up activities like watching TV or texting meet the obligation, but can people take their Lenten sacrifice beyond the sweets or the social networking? Well, as the church dons purple during the season of penance, the Catholic Coalition on Climate Change is trying to convince the faithful to go green. And to find out more about that, I spoke earlier today with the group's executive director, Dan Milsa. Well, Dan Misla, thanks so much for joining us here on Currents today. We really appreciate your time, sir.
You're welcome, Matt. Glad to do it.
Well, I think this is a very interesting thing that you guys are kind of emphasizing here at the beginning of Lent, trying to encourage people to sort of take a different look at, sacrifice, maybe giving up things or making some changes during the Lenten season. Tell me a little bit about what you're encouraging people to do during the season of Lent.
Well, I think it is an opportunity to, Lent is always an opportunity to examine our lifestyles, and I think what we're saying is it's important and good to give up things to remind us that there are those people around the world and even in our own communities who don't have some of the comforts, some of the things that we enjoy. So giving up things like ice cream or chocolate or coffee or whatever that might be is an important reminder. But I think it's also a reminder that the lifestyles that we lead, particularly in wealthy countries, and one of the wealthiest in the world, the United States, I think it's also a reminder that we simply cannot sustain the consumption model that we've been used to that we've enjoyed for all these years. And this might be a step to Lent might be an opportunity for people to start to think about that a little bit more seriously.
Sure. So maybe instead of giving up the sweets or, the fatty foods or whatever this Lenten season, what are some things that people can do to try and make a difference in other ways with regard to climate change and other things?
Well, I wouldn't want to dismiss those other things. I know, for instance, the Operation Rice Bowl program run by Catholic Relief Services encourages those, to not snack between meals and use that money to do a couple of things. One, perhaps set that money aside and donate to Catholic Relief Services and the work that they're doing around the world, but also spend some time discovering what, in fact, they do and what some of the issues people who are in low-income countries face. But I think, there's also, it may also be a time to consider energy consumption. Can we drive less and walk more if we're able? Can we, at least in the Washington, D.C. area, it's been incredibly cold. Can we turn our heat down a little bit, both to save money, but also to maybe reduce our carbon footprint a little bit? If one of our light bulbs goes, can we replace that with a compact fluorescent? Those types of things also remind us of the beauty of creation and help us prepare for the Easter season.
Well, very good. Yeah, and even those LED bulbs, I understand, are coming into more popularity as well, and those are even more energy efficient than the compact fluorescents. But they're of course a little bit more expensive too.
Yeah, of course. The technology, hopefully, the technology will get better and the price will come down. But yeah, they are certainly a lot more efficient. There is, of course, a little bit of mercury in the compact fluorescents, so they need to be disposed of properly as well, which is another step to take, but they certainly will save a lot of money in the long run.
Well, the technology is there, and of course it's always improving. Now, you spoke a moment ago about why Lent is a good time to focus on this. Of course, there's been, climate change, and the concept of climate change is something that, at least in political circles, has garnered something of some controversy. How do you emphasize that during this time? I mean, how do you talk to people who might say, well, you know, if climate change is happening, I don't believe that man is causing it or any of that? Do you just say, well, follow the lead, follow the example of, say, Pope Benedict, who's taking some big changes at the Vatican and kind of making things more green? How do you approach people who look at the issue that way?
Well, I think that's right. I mean, the Vatican certainly has taken the lead. The Pope is very concerned about climate change. The science is very clear on climate change. Almost every National Academy of Science in every country around the globe agrees that it's an issue. So I think, I think it is important for people to become aware of the science. But even if climate change wasn't as urgent a problem as some feel, it's still the right thing to do. We are called to be stewards of God's creation, to share the resources that are on the planet that aren't being shared equitably, and to reverence the gift of nature and all of creation that God gave us.
Well, it is an important call, and we thank you, Dan Missler, for joining us here today on Currents to share more about it and kind of what you guys are emphasizing during this Lenten season as well. Thank you so much for taking some time for us.
Thank you.
Great initiative there. Well, stay tuned when Currents comes back, finding new ways to cut through the digital noise and reach young people. We'll take you to the Brooklyn Diocese Annual Youth Day. But first, on this first day of Lent, Ash Wednesday, the question everyone wants to know, what are you giving up? And that's what we asked people outside St. Patrick's Cathedral earlier today. Here's some of what they had to say.
I generally don't give something up for Lent. What I generally try to do is try to do something positive during Lent.
Actually, we were just speaking about this. I don't know what, but probably meat. I plan to be doing and praying.
Soda and cheese, actually.
Shopping, eating in between meals.
Takeout food.
I usually give up chocolate and all dessert.
Sweets, soda, in that order.
Thinking badly about people, especially in a case where I feel like I've been wronged in some way.
I gave up meat and I gave up drinking.
Alcohol.
Everything.
And finally tonight, a riddle. What do you get when you combine Teens, the Catholic answer to Weird Al Yankovic, and the Office of Faith Formation? Give up? Well, you get You Are the Light of the World. That's the annual Diocesan Youth Day event that took place at Immaculate Conception Center over the weekend. Sounds pretty fun, too. Teens and tweens gathered from all corners of the diocese to figure out how to be a light in the world and to let their light of faith shine in everything that they do. As you're about to see, there was a lot of learning, but there was also a lot of fun along the way.
There are a lot of obstacles to reaching young Catholics. I think since we live in such a media-hungry society, all the commercials that are thrown at kids, all the advertisements, all of the movies, songs, the fact that we're attached. I mean, I have an iPhone now. I'm attached to the internet all the time. You know, Facebook, MySpace, all those things are at these kids. And how do we get them? Well, the answer is events like this, where they turn off those phones, and instead of listening to their friends or checking their statuses on Facebook, they're listening to God and what He's got to say to them.
I want to be authentic, and I think that's what this generation is looking for, authenticity, and looking for people who really believe what they believe and go out there and live for God. And I think once the authenticity comes in, then that will take its own source of coolness and it'll bloom in its own way.
I think it's important for young people today to see other young people experiencing their faith. It's not every day you see a bunch of teenagers getting together and saying, hey, I'm Catholic. And this is a day that they can do that. And they're not judged by other people, and they can worship, and they can have Eucharist together in a safe environment.
I gotta hear it. For the night needs a beam of the good light, and the fight's gotta be the good fight.
What I'm trying to demonstrate is that the Catholic Church has so much treasures, and it all comes down to following God, and God loves you so much. I know that the theme here is You Are the Light of the World, and I want to really give kids the tools to be able to go to their schools, go to their friends, go to their families, to be that light of the world, but do it in a way that's fun and engaging and very memorable.
Should I stand or should I kneel?
bad rap for not having good youth programs, but I don't think that's the same anymore. What other religion has a World Youth Day where a couple of million people go sleep out on the lawn to celebrate Eucharist with their spiritual father? That's us, and that's what we do.
I think it's good for them to see that it's not necessarily the future, it's that right now their energy and their joy is really the Holy Spirit at work in their life, and that they're the church right now. And if they can just have a positive experience at this so-called church event, that they could take this home and get more involved in their community and at school.
Even just from seeing them out of their first breakout talks, they were really thrilled. They got a lot out of those talks, whether it was a talk on being the light of the world, or whether it was a talk on how they can rebel against the social norms to be more Christ-like.
One thing that I learned is that sometimes a simple thank you hello can brighten someone's day, and you can be the light for anybody. We are the light of the world.
It did look like fun there, and it's like one guy played a mean air guitar too. I'm kind of jealous. Well, that's it for this edition of Currents. Now, coming up next, you'll notice this behind me. Well, on net here, it's Herod's tomb, the Western Wall tunnel, and the Jesus boat. It's the Unearthed series, taking a look at some of these fascinating discoveries and the impact they have on the scientific, religious, and in some cases, yes, even political world. And tomorrow night here on Currents, in the 40 days of Lent, it's also 40 days for life. It will show you how it kicked off right here in New York. Until then, though, be sure to visit us online at currentsny.net. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.